They told me I was the strong one, the one who didn't need kindness. That was their excuse. But strength has limits, and I learned what happens when mine finally broke. Christmas dinner. Just the word should bring to mind warmth, laughter, and the smell of something roasting in the oven. But for me, that night will forever be remembered as the one where my own mother made sure there wasn't even a plate for me at the table. Yeah, you heard that right. My mom, at Christmas, told me there wasn't enough food, while my brother's girlfriend, who he'd been dating for all of 1 month, was happily digging into her second helping. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table. I just stood up, took the dish I had brought with me, and walked out. And somehow, I was the one they called rude. The day had already started off rough. We'd driven 3 hours through groggy weather and clogged highways. My boys, 7 and 9, were buzzing in the back seat, excited in the way only kids can be. They didn't yet understand that family doesn't always mean what it's supposed to mean. I had a pounding headache before we even pulled up, but I told myself, just a few hours. Smile, eat, and leave. When we arrived, no one came out to greet us. Not even a wave from the window. Walking inside felt like stepping into someone else's party. The dining room was already packed, like we were late, even though we were right on time. My mother glanced up, gave me that clipped little smile she's perfected, one that never reaches her eyes, and then went right back to her wine. At the head of the table sat my brother Jeff, proudly showing off his brand new girlfriend, Lana. A woman he's known for weeks. And yet somehow, she was already sitting beside Mom like she was royalty. Her sequin dress sparkled like she was the main event, and she laughed in that high-pitched, fake way that grated on me instantly. Meanwhile, my boys and I? We were shoved to the very end of the table. No decorations. No place cards. No napkins. Just 3 chairs pushed together like an afterthought. Dinner started making its way around. My kids got their plates. Everyone else got theirs. I sat there waiting, my hands folded, watching as the serving dishes got lighter and lighter. And then, Mom walked right past me. She smirked, loud enough for everyone to hear, and said, "There wasn't enough for everyone. I figured you wouldn't mind, Kirsten." The room carried on like it was nothing. My boys froze, glancing at me with confusion. My heart sank, but I held still. I tried, to convince myself it was just a mistake. That maybe my plate was coming. But then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife, Lana, sparkly little Lana, got up and went for seconds. Seconds. And my mother? She actually helped her scoop more potatoes onto her plate, like it was the most natural thing in the world. That was it. Something in me just broke. I stood up, my chair scraping the floor. My feet carried me to the kitchen where Lana had set down her plate to grab a drink. I picked it up. Didn't say a word. Just lifted the plate and walked it back through the dining room. The silence hit like a wave. You could feel every pair of eyes on me. Mom's face tightened into that look that screamed, "How dare you?" Jeff muttered something under his breath. Lana blinked in confusion, her sequins catching the light. And I didn't care. My boys didn't ask questions either. They simply picked up their half-eaten plates and followed me, heads held high. No tears. No begging. Just quiet solidarity. I buckled them into the car, climbed into the driver's seat, and pulled away from that house without a single word. 5 minutes down the road, my phone buzzed. First a call from Mom. Then another. Then a text from Jeff, real mature, "Kirsten. Way to ruin Christmas." I stared at the screen, then slid it face down on the seat. I didn't answer. I didn't look back. Because in that moment, it hit me. This wasn't just one bad night. This was the final straw. They thought I was being rude? Oh no, what they didn't realize was that they hadn't seen rude yet. And I was about to show them. The drive home was heavy. My boys whispered in the back seat, little voices hushed like they were trying to figure out if they were in trouble or if something bad had just happened. I didn't say a word the entire ride. Not until we got home. Once inside, I made them cocoa, turned on a movie, and let them curl up on the couch. Before long, they were asleep, the soft sound of their breathing filling the room. I sat in the dark, staring at the glow of the TV, and it hit me, this wasn't about a plate of food. Not really. It was about every plate before it. Every snide comment disguised as a joke. Every holiday where I was expected to pour out my energy, my money, my patience, only to get cold stares, whispers, and silence in return. And here's the kicker, I had been paying their bills for the last 2 years. Nobody talks about that part. When Dad had his heart scare and Mom stopped working, it was my card they used. My paycheck keeping their lights on. My money covering their groceries, their prescriptions, even those random Amazon orders that had nothing to do with survival. And I never complained. I thought it was the right thing to do. But gratitude? Not once. Not a single thank you. The next morning, I woke up with a kind of clarity that burned in my chest. I picked up the phone and made 2 calls. The first was to the bank. I canceled the card they'd been using, moved all the automatic payments to a new one, and shut that door for good. Then I sent the text. Short, polite, final, please don't use the card anymore. I've closed it. I'll be handling my finances privately from now on. That was it. No explanations. No apologies. It took exactly 43 minutes for the first call to come through. I let it ring. Then Mom's voicemail popped up. Not an apology, not even close. Just a long, passive-aggressive rant about how confused she was, how disappointed she felt in me. She even mentioned Christmas dinner, as if starving me at her table somehow proved her point. Then Dad sent a text. "What's going on with the card? We can't get groceries." I stared at it for a long time. Then deleted it. And then came the flood. Lana, my aunt, people I hadn't spoken to in a year, suddenly had plenty to say. The family group chat, the same one they always forgot to include me in unless they needed something, was suddenly alive with fake concern and thinly veiled insults. I didn't reply to a single one. Not because I had nothing to say, but because they hadn't earned a response. That night, I sat cross-legged on the floor with my boys. We ate grilled cheese, watched them build Legos, and for the first time in years, I felt light. Not joyful, not yet, but free. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Cutting off the card, that was just step 1. 3 days passed. I didn't block anyone. I didn't yell. I didn't chase after them. I just lived like they didn't exist. And apparently, that silence scared them more than any argument ever could. On the 4th day, there was a knock at the door. I didn't even need to look, I knew it was them. My parents never came to my house unless they wanted something. They never showed up for birthdays, never asked to see the kids. But now, here they were, standing on my porch with stiff smiles and a sad little bag of store-brand cookies. I opened the door just enough to be polite. My sons were on the couch behind me, watching. I didn't want them to hear, but I wasn't about to hide either. Mom started first, her voice coated in sugar. She said they were worried about me, that they didn't understand what had happened, that maybe I was going through something. And I told her, flat out, she was right. I was going through something. It's called clarity. Dad tried to smooth things over, said it was all just a misunderstanding. That the plate thing at Christmas was an accident. They thought I'd already eaten. I reminded him I drove 3 hours with 2 kids and wasn't even given a seat at the table. He didn't have a comeback. Then Mom said the words that snapped it all into place. We just thought you could handle it. You've always been the strong one. That was their excuse. That was the story they'd been telling themselves for years. Because I was strong, I didn't need kindness. I didn't need a plate of food. I didn't need respect or decency. And in their minds, that made it okay. I looked them both in the eye and told them I was done. Done with the money. Done with the role. Done being the silent scapegoat, the dutiful daughter, the emotional punching bag. I told them they weren't welcome in my home, and I didn't want them around my boys until they learned how to respect their own daughter. They didn't yell. They didn't cry. They just stood there, stunned, like they couldn't believe the script had flipped. I closed the door. And that night, for the first time in years, I slept like a rock. The next morning there was an envelope taped to my front door. No stamp, no return address, just a strip of clear tape and my name scrawled on the front like an afterthought. Inside? 4 pages, front and back, all my mother's handwriting, meandering sentences, half apologies that read like accusations, guilt trips folded between the lines. She wrote about how hard things were now that I'd cut them off, how much they needed help, how disappointed she was. I started reading, then stopped. I ripped the pages in half and dropped them in the trash without finishing. I didn't want whatever it was she tried to sew together with words. That quiet after I closed the door lasted maybe 3 days. No calls, no texts, just this heavy, staged silence that felt suspiciously like the calm before a storm. My parents are not peaceful people. They go quiet when they're cooking up something. The silence wasn't mercy. It was plotting. I tried to pretend life was ordinary. I took the boys sledding. We made pancakes. I cleaned out the garage until my hands ached. I told myself to breathe, to let the quiet do its work. And for a little while, it almost worked. Then, on a Thursday in late January, the obvious thing happened, it didn't. I picked the kids up from school like I always do. My youngest barreled into me, voice bubbling about glitter, glue and paint, typical. My older son, the one who watches everything and says little, handed me a folded scrap of paper. A lady gave this, he said, like that explained everything. She said she was a friend of Grandma's. The paper was tortured, crumpled and smooth like it had been in someone's pocket for hours. No hello, no signature. Just a screenshot, my bank statement from a couple months back. My personal account. Transaction circled in red ink, a $146 grocery charge in their town, 3 pharmacy bills, a hotel reservation in Cape May with my name nowhere nearby. At the bottom someone had scrawled, "So, you've always been keeping score." A cold fist tightened in my stomach. It didn't add up at first. Then it clicked, Jeff. Years earlier I'd helped him during his divorce. I'd shown him how to use my banking app, even handed over temporary access so he could move money for Mom's prescriptions. I never changed the password. I'd trusted that it wasn't worth making a fuss over. Apparently, trust had a cost. I slammed the car door when we got home, pulled the blinds, locked everything, and sat at my kitchen table like a winded animal. I changed passwords, every single one, then called the bank and filed a security alert. They confirmed there had been a login from Nevada. Jeff and Lana had moved out there 3 months ago. Of course they had. That night the harassment turned oddly intimate. A delivery driver dropped a plain brown box on my porch, no return name, no invoice. Inside, a half-used roll of duct tape and a small, worn stuffed bear. My son's bear. The one he'd lost at my parents' last summer. No note. No apology. Just the bear and an implied threat. I called the police. Not because of the teddy, because passing that bear around like a token was a message. It was a warning disguised as a, remember this? I handed the officer the crumpled bank screenshot, the torn letter, Jeff's name. He told me to document everything, to put up cameras, to be cautious. They took a report. They were polite. They were also, I could tell, waiting to see what would happen next. And then, that cursed night when the air smelled like wet asphalt, we came home from a movie to find the garage door sprayed with red paint. One word, sloppy and dripping, ungrateful. The letters ran like they were written through tears. My heart didn't do anything dramatic, no sob, no hysterics, just this flat, cold recognition. This wasn't random vandalism. It was targeted. I watched the security footage. Grainy, midnight images, someone in a hoodie, quick movements, a flashlight beam. Then the car 2 blocks over, idling like it didn't want to be seen. Clear as day, the license plate. I ran it. Lane. Lana, Lana. Of course. The woman who'd had the nerve to sit beside my mother at Christmas and scoop second helpings as I watched. I didn't scream. I didn't call my parents names or fling accusations into the night. I made hot chocolate, tucked the boys in, kissed their foreheads, and sat at the kitchen window until dawn bled the sky pale. Their message was loud and ugly. They wanted to terrorize me into coming back, groveling and grateful. What they didn't realize. I had years of patience stacked like unpaid bills, and I'd been paying them for the better part of 2 years. I'd cleaned up their messes, swallowed my pride, funneled money into their lives and never once let my boys see the chaos behind the curtain. They thought they were breaking me. They were about to learn they'd picked a fight with the one person they'd always relied on to fix everything. So I sat there in the early morning light with my hands wrapped around a mug, and I started to make a list. Names, times, transactions, camera angles. Small things, practical things, every tiny detail I'd need. Not because I wanted revenge for its own sake, but because I'd finally decided I wouldn't be the cleanup crew anymore. They had stepped over a line. And they hadn't even seen the consequence coming. The next morning, I made my move. I called a locksmith, had every lock in the house swapped out, front, back, even the side door nobody ever used. Then I rang a friend in home security and had him wire the place with extra cameras, inside and out. I wasn't going to keep waiting for the next creepy little stunt. If they wanted to play games, I'd be watching. While the boys were at school, I took that stuffed bear, the one they'd mailed like some twisted reminder, and set it in a metal bucket out back. I lit a match. Watched the fur curl and blacken until nothing was left but smoke and ash. I didn't feel relief. Not satisfaction. Just clarity. The old me would have tried to fix things, smooth it over, hunt for some compromise. That part of me was gone. And then, I started planning. I gathered everything. Every receipt, every withdrawal, every shady charge they'd slapped onto my account over the last 2 years. I turned it into a PDF, a ledger of every way they'd used me. I added pictures too, the spray paint on my garage, the weird package with duct tape, the printed bank statement my son had been handed at school. Then I hit send. Not just to them. To every relative who ever whispered about me, to every so-called friend who still followed them online, even to the church my mother liked to brag about volunteering at. Subject line, since they want to keep score, let's do it right. It didn't take long. Within an hour my phone lit up like fireworks. My aunt called me sobbing, saying she had no idea. A cousin sent me a screenshot of Mom's Facebook post, her vague little pity plea about being betrayed by blood. But the comments weren't what she'd hoped. People weren't comforting her. They were questioning her. The truth was finally out. But I wasn't finished. I knew money was the only language they truly understood. So I contacted every company tied to my old credit card, updated my information across the board, except one. Their internet provider. That, I left hanging. 2 days later, the phone rang. My mother's voice, tight and urgent. Kirsten, we can't access our account. Can you help us log in? I didn't pick up. I forwarded the voicemail to my lawyer and then called the landlord of their duplex. He was an old acquaintance. Calmly, I explained my parents had been listing me as their financial guarantor without permission. I told him those automatic payments were over. He said he understood. He said he'd be in touch with them. That evening, Jeff called. Then Lana. Finally, my mother left a message, her tone low, careful, almost rehearsed. Please, Kirsten, we don't know what to do. For a moment, I almost caved. That old guilt tried to creep back in. But then I saw it again in my mind, Christmas night, my son's confused faces, the spray-painted word dripping down my garage. I replied once. Just once, you said I was strong, remember? So be strong. Figure it out. Then I blocked every number. Changed mine the next day. Weeks passed. No knocks. No letters. No packages. Just silence. Real silence. And instead of relief, it made me uneasy. People like them don't give up when you close the door. They start pounding harder. One night, after tucking the boys into bed, I checked the cameras before turning in. Everything looked normal, until I saw it. On the sidewalk under the street lamp, a cardboard sign propped up like some desperate altar. I walked out and picked it up. The words scrawled across it, we're sorry. Just let us explain, please. No names. No threats. Just that. I tossed it straight into the trash bin and went back inside. A few days later, a letter showed up. Not at my home, at my job. Inside was an apology. From my father. And this time, it sounded real. No, sorry if you were hurt. No veiled digs. He admitted they'd used me. Said he hadn't realized how far things had gone until Jeff crossed the line. He wrote that Mom hadn't been well lately, that they were desperate. That word, desperate, lodged in my chest like a splinter. But I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel rage either. I just felt done. I didn't write back. Still, one detail nagged at me. That hotel charge in Cape May. I'd brushed it off before as just another shady expense. But now, I pulled it up again. I called the hotel. Asked for the receipt. It wasn't for my parents. It was for Jeff. 2 nights, Beachview Inn. Guest names, Al Owens and Lana. They'd used my card for a romantic weekend getaway. And it wasn't just any weekend. It was the same one I sat in urgent care with 2 sick kids, wiping fevers and puke bowls while they sipped cocktails on a balcony, on my dime. That was it. The last thread snapped. I printed everything again, but this time, I mailed it differently. To Jeff's new boss. his landlord, Lana's parents, her in-laws, all the places where their shiny new lives could get a little less comfortable. And then I made one more stop. I walked into a lawyer's office with my entire file and said, I don't want revenge. I want protection. I want this to stop. Together, we drafted formal cease and desist letters. One for Jeff. One for my parents. I signed them both with my full name. No apology. No explanation. That night when I got home, my boys were waiting. I hugged them tighter than usual. My youngest looked up at me with those big eyes and asked, Are Grandma and Grandpa coming back? I told him no. And he smiled, not out of spite, but because he understood. For the first time, I wasn't letting them hurt me anymore. Sometimes the hardest part of breaking free isn't walking away. It's realizing you could have left years earlier. But once you finally do, you don't look back. And I never will. Update. 2 months slipped by. Winter melted into one of those sluggish, soggy springs where the air feels heavy and the sky never quite clears. You'd think the silence would have brought peace. It didn't. It brought space. And space? Space gives memory room to stretch its legs, to wander, to come back knocking when you least expect it. The boys were thriving, grades up, smiles bigger, laughter echoing through the house in a way I hadn't heard in years. And me? I was doing better too. I was finally breathing without waiting for the next shoe to drop. But deep down, I kept bracing anyway. That's the cruel trick of trauma. Even when the storm passes, you never really trust the sky again. Then one morning, it came. A letter. A real one, stamped and postmarked from some small town in Oregon. No return address, just my name. Inside wasn't a rant, wasn't a threat. It was a photograph. My parents. They stood behind a folding table in what looked like a church basement. Above them, a hand-painted sign, Community Donations Welcome. They didn't look broken, not destitute. Just different. Smaller. My mother's hair was shorter, streaked with gray. My father had a cast on his hand, his face more lined than I remembered. No message. No explanation. Just that image. It felt too intentional to be a mistake. The postmark matched a small shelter, so I looked it up online. Their Facebook page had posted something 2 weeks earlier, asking for volunteers. And there, in the comments, someone mentioned a quiet couple who showed up every weekend. Kept to themselves. Worked hard. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't reach out. Didn't call the shelter. But the thought gnawed at me. If they'd sent that photo, and I knew in my gut they had, it meant they were trying to say something. Maybe that something had shifted. Or maybe they just wanted me to think it had. Then things got stranger. One afternoon, leaving work, I spotted another envelope, this one taped to my windshield. Plain white, like the first. Inside was a check. My father's handwriting across the bottom. No note. No threats. No demand for forgiveness. Just a check. A gesture. A reversal. I didn't cash it. I didn't shred it either. I tucked it away in the same drawer as the photo. Not keepsakes. Evidence. Proof that the past doesn't just vanish, it mutates. That's the thing about history, it has claws. It resurfaces when you least expect it, scratching at the edges of the life you've rebuilt. I don't know what they're doing in Oregon, or why they've suddenly decided to play the part of humbled helpers in a church basement. I don't know if it's real change, or just another performance with a new audience. But what I do know is this isn't an ending. It's a pause. And the next time they reach out, because deep down, I know they will, I won't be the one standing there stunned and speechless. Not anymore.